So normally, Janavi, you know something, that there was a rumor that the Hindustan Unilever at that time HLL CEO had a particular way of going to office, and that's the place where the CMO used to put all the hoardings, so that he thought that something was going on, right? And that's why the agency was in cahoots with the CMO
CMO.
at that point. Yeah, at that point in time, and that was so weird. I mean, we've moved from that place to now, but I have been part and parcel of many agency evaluations when they pitch and when they're trying to select an agency. Normally what tends to happen is it's a very convoluted and political process, but I thought in this episode what we could do is perhaps look at it from a new lens, from a lens of actually, are they going to move the needle for you, right? When you're evaluating an agency pitch, because you need to work with this agency for at least 6 months, if not more. I'm talking in today's day and time, not in the days of yore. So let's go. If you had to select an agency, right? Normally, what would you do? Just out of the top of your head, right? How would you select your agency? And then I will critique you.
Okay, right. So just as a background, like I've been a part of the client side. I've been working with the agencies myself.
Yeah.
There was a short period when I myself was, working in an agency sort of a model.
Of course.
Right. So the way I would evaluate, or I did evaluate the agencies, was number one, what exactly are my requirements? Where am I in terms of where my brand is? What kind of agency should I go for? Should I go for one integrated kind of an agency? Should I go for piece and meals kinds of an agencies? Right. Then used to come what kind of work they are doing, what kind of process that they have. Now, this is something where I generally differ from other people, because I pay more attention to what their thought process is, as opposed to what the showreels that they are showcasing on their website or the portfolio that they send across. Then, does their vision align with my vision?
Yeah.
Right? Is their working style similar to mine? Then what kind of work that they have done, is that aligned to my brand tone, my brand style? Whatever I'm envisioning for my brand or for my product, will that come to life in the way that I am thinking by that agency, right? Be it performance marketing, be it your creative agency, whatever. And then I would go to, okay, is your price point fitting into my budget, etc. So that is the entire pipeline. But my main focus is, once I have basically eliminated the useless agencies from whatever pitches I get, I generally have a call with them to understand their working style, their thought process, and all of that stuff. And that call opens a lot of gateways for me, where you can't bullshit a bullshitter, basically. So it's easy to weigh out the bullshit and to get to the crux.
No, this is fantastic, and this is very good as a starting point, Janavi. Because if I had to make it into a list of points, I would say strategic alignment will be a point. I would definitely say the ability to execute will be a point. The third thing would be, based upon your vision, do you need an agency that can do more than one thing, or are you looking for a specific social media agency, for example? Would be another. Then there would be obviously you would be getting rid of the bullshit agencies, as you say, because of the way in which their portfolio is, right? And the kind of work that they've done. So it's a great starting point. And I've been part of many agency pitches wherein we've had this list of factors, which you're kind of rating agencies on a scale of 1 to 5. So it's a bunch of people sitting around a table. Agencies come and make a pitch, or maybe online, or whatever it is, and then you're saying, okay, tick. Okay, here 1, 2, 3, and then there's a discussion, and of course, some call is made. Now, I do think that there is a particular bias that does come into the picture, which I think can come from the CEO, or can come from the CMO, or can come from the board of directors, or whatever. So that is also factored in. That is also factored in. And here's another thing: you might have an incumbent agency who have become great friends with you, right, over a period of time, and now you are suddenly asked by your boss to evaluate them again, and so they're also invited for the pitch. But there are obviously some feelings involved. And I think that to be objective about this does require a lot of skill, and it's as much an art as much as it is a science. So just because you make the tick boxes happen may not necessarily result in you getting the right agency. So I was wondering whether we can recast this by looking at a different kind of lens, which is perhaps more germane to selecting an agency, or any person who's looking at this video to select an agency beyond these factors, because these factors are absolutely critical and they should be part of it. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah. These factors should be a part of it, but they should neither be the starting point nor the end point.
Yeah, right. So the reason why I asked this question to you is because you're a very thoughtful person, and so you're in your head. So when you're in your head, what I have to do is get you out of your head first. In order for me to actually figure out what agency I am going to finally go with, I need to respond almost at a visceral level to the kind of work that they've done. Now,
Yeah.
that doesn't mean that you don't look at their ability to execute and all of that. So that is a factor to get rid of bullshit agencies. But eventually, you're looking even prior to a pitch, right? You're evaluating the people you're trying to invite to the pitch. You
Hmm.
have to look at their work from a very different perspective. So instead of trying to select an agency, you have to select your own mind when it actually is evaluating an agency. Is this making sense?
Yeah, yeah. I think maybe we can elaborate on this point a little. What do
Yeah.
you mean, like get into your own head and all of that?
Yeah, no, see, we are coming to any sort of work assignment that is with us with not a beginner's mind. So
Hmm.
what tends to happen is that we have a particular, this is my vision, right? This is
Yeah,
where I need to go. This is what needs to happen and stuff like that. And while that's great, you need to discard that goddamn thing for a bit.
okay.
Because unless and until you are absolutely having a beginner's mind and looking at their communication as if it's happening to you without all that bias, without you looking at it as if you're a marketer, without your as if you're looking at it as a CEO or whatever you may be, what you have to do is just say, okay, I'm an empty vessel and I'm looking at your communication.
Hmm.
And how much am I moved viscerally? Okay, how much am I moved viscerally? Now let me explain this a little more, right?
Yeah.
How have tears come to my eyes? Okay, have they made me smile?
Hmm.
Okay, or are there butterflies in my tummy? Or am I able to actually feel the urge to buy this?
Yeah.
Right, behaviorally. Now normally what happens is that when you're in your head and you're thinking about things logically, you don't connect to things viscerally. And what we are doing eventually through whichever agency we select, we are trying to figure out whether you can move the needle from
Yeah.
an emotional perspective for human beings. So I think that that is absolutely critical.
Yeah, yeah, our bias generally seeps in. Like here, it's a basically a law of the jungle, right?
Yeah.
So you're evaluating between a peacock and a wolf, technically,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
So we generally have, we as human beings, we have this tendency of making something greater than our life because we are
Yeah.
already coming from that mindset. So we
Yeah.
already know that, this is what I'm thinking, this is the kind of, say, a brand film that I'm thinking of, and whatever the other person is saying, we somehow tend to beautify it in our own head, right?
Hmm.
We tend to receive it better. Now you're absolutely right about the fact, the way you keep on, going on about I sit and receive.
Yes,
We
I said
generally
that.
don't do that. We don't sit
We-
and receive. We don't see if it is a peacock's feathers that look absolutely beautiful, that might have a Khan's lion behind it, but it might not help me survive. It might
Yeah.
not help me reach my goals, right? If I am in that, if I need a wolf's scars, if what I need at the end of the day is somebody, a scrappy performance driven agency, if what I need is instant revenue, the Khan's lion is not going to help me,
Sure. Yes.
right? So when we just sit and receive whatever the person is communicating, our mind cuts through that bullshit. Our mind cuts through that salesy giri, like we say it, right? And comes right down to whether or not this will help me in the long run, whether or not this will move the needle.
And I'll tell you something really interesting. So it's not only your mind that you need to access. Okay, now this can go into woo woo or mystical territory. So I'm going to try and connect it back to evolutionary biology.
Yeah.
Okay, now my daughter and I just recently went to see a film called Dhurandhar, and we were sitting and early stages of before the film starts. There's trailers going, and before that there's ads going,
Yeah.
and UK theater ads are some of the worst that we've seen. So we decided on a scale of 1 to 10, let's try to rate these ads. And this is when the thought hit me that, okay, you know what, I'm going to look at it completely from a beginner's mind. And there's this ad which was doing 6 7 and stuff like that, and I realized, so I could understand it intellectually, but my daughter was reacting to it viscerally. she was like, oh, they don't get Gen Z at all, or they don't get Gen Alpha at all. And I was like, oh, clever, and all of that. So it literally, you have to not only look at your own mind, but you have to look at your TG's mind, right? You have to look at your
Yeah.
persona's mind and figure out whether it's working for them. So this beginner's mind thing that I'm talking of is not only how you're receiving their communication, but how you perceive other people. So you got to carry that outside the piece of communication, maybe even in a focus group or an in-depth interview that you're doing with people, and getting their reactions to communication when you're actually checking out pitches, and see how they're reacting. But for that, you have to keep your own biases aside and be prepared to be wrong. So
That
that
is yeah, very true. We
yeah,
often look at any piece of communication through the mindset of either a marketer or somebody who's
yeah,
running a business, right? And
yeah,
it often happens like when we're watching some ad on the television, I would be like, oh, nice,
yeah,
right? And my mom would be like, "Samajh nahi aaya. What do they want to communicate?"
yeah, yeah.
Right?
So yeah,
Yeah, because I'm
absolutely.
seeing the nuances. I'm seeing, oh, this is the subconscious message they wanted to give. It landed perfectly well. And
Yeah.
she'll be like, what? Like, it didn't land well.
No, and the more experience you get, the more baggage you get, and the
Yeah.
more unable you are to see not just your own mind as a beginner, but also people whom you're trying to reach. Is this going to move the needle? So for that, you have to maybe go. When I say I receive, right now, what I'm trying to do from a scientific perspective is I'm trying to open up or light up different neural networks in my head. So I'm
Mm.
not only trying to look at it from a logical, rational perspective coming from my prefrontal cortex, I'm also trying to engage my limbic system, that emotional center of your brain, or I'm also trying to figure out whether this makes me fly or fear, or all that flight, fright, all of that, which comes
Yeah.
from your reptilian brain. So I need to light up all of these neural networks in my head, and for that I need to stop viewing the world the way in which I normally do, because
Mm.
otherwise we have already suppressed those neural networks in our head, because we are getting a specific lens about reality based upon, okay, I'm calibrating my limbic system to this much, I'm calibrating my reptilian brain to this much, I'm calibrating my logical thing to this much, and then suddenly you say, oh no, rules don't apply, let's
Yeah.
move and let me see. And that is when you will be able to actually gain some insights. I'm not saying this is a perfect science, I'm just saying that this will allow you to actually see a different world than what you normally would. And this is a very critical thing, especially because your agency is supposed to move human beings, isn't
Yeah.
it? Your
Yeah.
agency is not supposed to tick boxes.
Correct. Yeah. So if I'm putting this in the layman terms,
Hmm.
somebody, if we are evaluating an
Yes.
agency for our company, right? How would you go about it? First is, of course, understood. You look at it from no mindset at all. Like, I think that is the word, no mindset, right? You should not have anything. You should not have watched 10 different ads before this. You should not say, I want a Fevicol kind of an ad, or I want a Johnny Walker kind of an ad, or I want a performance marketing agency that gets me 200% ROAS in 10 days or whatever. You should have absolutely no mindset. That is number one. What is the next step? How do you
I'm
evaluate?
saying, Janavi, even to get to that step, there are like 10 steps involved. Like,
Okay.
why? Why does that happen? Because you are always in a hurry. Let's say you're a CEO or a founder or a senior member of the team. You're always in a hurry. There's this dopamine hitting you. You've got these tasks. So this looks like another task.
Yeah.
Okay. So one of the things, how the hell do you extricate yourself from that?
Hmm.
And that is not easy. So you have to take a break from the routine, and whatever routine it may be, you have to
Yeah.
take a deep breath. I don't care whether you do pranayam or whether you do meditation or whether you go for a walk or whatever. I wouldn't recommend a smoke, but whatever it is, right? You have to look at a different thing. Walk on the other side of the street.
Yeah.
That's a,
Yeah,
that's
I
a
think
very simple hack.
okay. Yeah, I think this mindset also comes because clients generally tend to look at agencies like sort of a waiter, somebody who's
Mm,
waiting on them to do whatever task the CEO or the marketing manager tells them to do, right? That I mean, don't look at it like a Tinder swipe. Don't look at
mm,
it ek date kiya and then dump kiya, whatever, right? You
yeah.
look at agencies like you would evaluate
As
your partner,
Shadi.
right?
So not Tinder, but
Exactly. It's like a
Shadi.com.
marriage because it is like a marriage. It's
Yeah.
one at least 6 months to 1 year of a retainer,
Yes.
and it is
Yeah.
lakhs of rupees, minimum of
Yeah.
at least 50-60,000 per month going in,
Yes.
right? So
Yes.
it is a huge commitment getting into an agency, and then if it doesn't work, you can't just dump an agency and go to another agency, right? Then it is back to square
No.
zero. You're going
Yes.
back to the drawing board. So it is a huge
Yes.
time commitment. It is a huge money commitment, and more than that, it is a huge vision commitment, because
Yes.
whatever goes out there from the agency, be it your paid campaigns or be it your
Yeah.
film brand films or whatever, gets
Yeah.
stuck in the consumer mind. So you get
Absolutely.
tagged as a particular company. So you're very
Yes.
right about it. Like, spend some time coming to even this stage where you're in the right mindset to evaluate the agencies. But yeah,
Absolutely.
now going forward from here.
So going forward, then you have to judge the communication. And once you start judging the communication, you judge it on these factors. Am I being moved towards any new behavior? Is my
Mm,
mind being changed? Okay, how is my TG actually looking at it and all of that? So you'll have that factored in.
yeah.
Then what you have to do is you have to say, okay, who's done this? Because eventually it's a human being who's done this. Sure, you
Mm,
might have used AI. Sure, you might have used some process or some agency framework to have reached your goal. But to be honest, it is a human being who's dreamt up of this idea or
yeah.
dreamt up of this execution, right? So you have to figure out, is this replicable? Is this a flash in the pan or is this replicable? So then you start looking at their communication across a lot of different clients, not for the kind of clients they've served, but to see if there's a pattern in their madness. And I think that is absolutely critical. To see a pattern in their madness means that you have to understand a story from, again, a biological sense. So you have to literally see, oh, so this is their playbook, this is what they do, this is their arc, this is, so whether it's soaps or shampoos or stainless steel, this is what they're doing. Once you see the pattern, you have to genuinely ask yourself, is this pattern going to work for me?
Mm,
Right? Because just because they have a pattern doesn't mean that they're not creative, right? Just,
yeah.
the critical question is like, okay, so I'm seeing a pattern that they have used across these different pieces of communication. Is this kind of pattern, which could be, let's say, talking to the hero archetype or talking to the explorer archetype or whatever it may be, is this going to work for me? Is this going to connect not just for me as a client, but for the people that I'm serving, my customers and prospects? So
Yeah.
I think that is absolutely critical to do as well.
True. So all of this is happening before the pitches come in. Does this
Absolutely, absolutely, because you're literally, because this, I know that we were trying to figure out how to evaluate an agency, but I think there's a step before evaluating an agency, because you literally need to unplug, do all this stuff, see the patterns, and come to a place wherein you actually are in a state wherein you can evaluate. Because
happen?
your evaluation actually literally has to happen based upon you seeing, okay, this is nice, this can move the needle, and this
Yeah.
is replicable. Here's another thing. Sorry, I'm going on and on. This is probably a favorite subject of mine, but what I would also do is, I wouldn't be too specific about sectors. Oh, you worked in the telecom sector, so you can do this. I think
Yeah.
it's a waste of time. I think it's
Agree.
a waste of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Why do you agree?
Okay, so apart from a few sectors like maybe pharmaceutical or finance that have
Yeah.
very particular guidelines and restrictions, that you
Mm.
can't have just any kind of an ad, you can't, you need some agency
Yeah.
who knows those
Yeah.
laws, whether or not they worked in the sector before, but who knows those regulations, right?
Yeah.
Every other sector is kind of agnostic. What I
Mm.
generally look at for an agency, okay, so for example, I'm a gaming company or I'm a Bitcoin company, right? How many agencies would there be that have done 10 case studies for gaming or Bitcoin? These are very new sectors, right? Even if even if I'm in FMCG, how many agencies would have done an FMCG ad before, during the D2C era,
Yeah.
right?
No, and that's
FMCG
absolutely.
ad, FMCG ad during the time of, when HUL or L'Oreal were the only big companies in the market, to today, when there is a Nykaa out there, when there are so many D2C companies happening, and I need to find my positioning within that crowded niche. How many agencies would have worked in that particular sector? And do I really think, as an FMCG person, a company that has made a Fevicol ad can also make an ad that would compete with the Nykaa?
See,
It's
there is a great, there is a, absolutely practical. What you're saying is absolutely practical, but there's a great temptation. And the temptation is that, you don't want to look like a fool in front of your CEO. If your agency, does not work, or if you're the CEO to the board of directors, if your agency does not work after 6 months after you having engaged with them,
Yeah.
the first question is, you picked an inexperienced agency who has no connect to our sector. Why did you pick that sort of thing? So that there is a fear involved, and
Yeah.
there's also there's certainly that involved. So which is why I understand people looking like, oh, you're working in you worked across educational institutes and allied sectors, go for it, right?
Yeah.
But I think that these solutions are literally ticking the boxes of a process that is completely redundant in today's day and age. So I'm going to add to your practicality from a behavioral perspective.
Yeah.
See, eventually human behavior is not related to the pharmaceutical sector.
Yeah.
Right? Human behavior is related to the wellness of you rather than the pharma sector. So if I'm
Yeah.
looking at the wellness basket, then there'll be pharmaceutical, there'll be yoga, there'll be gymming, there'll be so many things, right? Nutraceuticals, so many different things. So they form a basket. I am, as a human being, I'm not slicing and dicing things. I'm looking at communication which is across this specific basket, if not even across baskets. So
Yeah.
I need to be able to understand, can you move the needle in this specific basket?
Yeah.
Can you move the needle
Even
for
more than
wellness?
that, yeah, even more
Yeah.
than that, I think, okay, so the way I evaluate agencies and the way that I have tried to build my portfolio too, right,
Yeah.
is there adaptability in an agency depending on
Mm.
the problem? Now look
Mm.
at it this way, right? We tend to go with the experience because it's familiar territory.
Mm.
Right now, but
Mm.
think of it as a man. If you have been dating very hot women for the last 10 years and and none of them have worked out,
Yeah.
right? And the 11th girl that you go to is still whatever, a very hot girl, 38, 32, whatever that measurement is, right? Without going for the brains, you will end up making the exact same mistake that you have been making
Yeah.
for the last 10 years,
Yeah.
right? But you are just going for her because it's familiar territory. You have been navigating that dating scene since the last 10 years, so you're very used to it, you're familiar to it, you know how to respond to it. It is
Yeah.
easier to tell to your friends that this is my girlfriend rather than bringing another person that they will not recognize.
Yeah.
And in our mind, whenever we are evaluating something, we are already answering 10 other people about why we have chosen that particular person. The same thing happens with agencies also. It's not just
Mm.
about sectors. It's not about I'm a pharma company, so I've chosen somebody who's worked in pharma sector for the last 10 years, right? It's easier to answer because they have the credentials on the paper. On paper, they look very good,
Mm.
right? But what you should look for, at least what I tend to look for is there an adaptability in the terms of there were 10 different problems, and how did you adapt to those 10 different problems? How did you solve it? What was the end result? And
Yeah.
then I know that if you were able to successfully adapt to at least 7 out of those 10, there is a 70% chance that you will still be able to adapt well to my problem.
I think that's a very valid point about adaptability. I'll just have one caveat to it. You see, so when I'm reading Agatha Christie, I'm
Yeah.
not going to connect. I'm not going to expect Agatha Christie to write a rom-com for me. Okay. Yes. So there
Yeah.
will be a natural range and there'll be a natural limit to what you
Yeah.
can do as an author or as a creative person, right? You don't
Yeah.
expect specific movies from specific actors and so on and so forth, which
Yeah.
also applies to your agency. So
Hmm.
adaptability can go to a certain limit. So what I'm saying is, I agree with your adaptability perspective. I would just add a filter to it, which is like, and this is the hack that I was talking about. If you look at, let's say, not the pharma sector, but maybe wellness as a
Yeah.
category.
Hmm.
And then I see, okay, are you adaptable to move from gyms to yoga to pharma to
Yeah.
creating? Then there is some adaptability there, but I also know that you have some expertise in that specific thing, which is replicable.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, that gives you both. That gives you a
Yeah.
credibility, that gives you a confidence,
Yeah.
that gives you context also.
Yeah.
Basically.
So Janavi, I think we should have renamed this episode. How to evaluate yourself before you evaluate your agency. Yeah, because it actually makes sense, and I think we should cover how to evaluate an agency, perhaps, or evaluate agency pitches as a separate episode. I think this episode by itself, whenever you're looking at any piece of communication, especially when you're trying to choose an agency, demands its own space. Is what I think.
Know thyself and you'll win 1,000 battles, right? The
Absolutely, or
first
at
step,
least know that you do not know thyself. I think that is good enough. I was just thinking about this topic, and I was like, I think I know the reason why a lot of clients fail, because they don't actually put themselves in the place of the perfect evaluator before
yeah.
they start evaluating an agency. And I think that's
I
why,
think one point is that once we're talking about know thyself, right? It is very important that as a client you should know your own capabilities. Now, for
mm,
instance, you are giving a brief to an agency, right?
mm,
You have to evaluate whether your brief is cumbersome enough that the agency will be able to do something actionable about it, or you're just
I
going shooting in the dark and just giving the agency whatever they want to do. If you're doing that, both of these approaches are right? But in that case, then you have to see if the agency then has the capability to match what you don't have. If you
Yeah.
have a very, very particular order, if so, for example, you are going to a high-end restaurant and you know exactly which wine to pick, then you need a waiter who will get you exactly that wine in less than 20 seconds and get it perfect.
Barolo. Yes, I agree.
Right? But if you don't know which wine gets best paired with a fish, you need a waiter who would have that kind of a sommelier taste, that who knows what kind of pairing goes well. So you need
Yeah.
to go to a restaurant, or perhaps you need to talk to the manager to know exactly which wine to order. So you
Yeah.
need to know your own capability and then evaluate the agency based on what you don't have.
I absolutely agree. I think that there is another episode that is in the lurking mode, which is like, how do you brief your agency? But I think let's make this into a multi-part
I
series and
think if
really.
we keep talking for another 5 minutes, we'll come out with 10 more episodes.
I think so. I think so. But I hope that people have gotten some insights on how do you put yourself in the right mind frame before actually
Yeah.
evaluating any agency, and how do you actually look at some of these factors that we
Yeah.
are
I
talking
mean,
about.
at the end of the day, it's a principle of dualism and materialism, right?
My God. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so you always have to factor in there is a part of your brain that is mechanized, that will
Hmm.
work in syllogisms, that will work in binary booleans, and then there is a part of your brain that is connected to
Yeah.
where
Well
the
said.
emotions come out,
Now
right?
that you've dumbed it down, it makes sense to me. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. I dumbed it down. I am quoting Aristotle here. You said dumb it down.
Well, you dumbed down Aristotle. That's good enough for me. Yeah. So, on this happy note, shall we say what we are trying to say at the end of each episode, like 𝗀𝗍𝗶𝗴𝗄 or something like that?
No, I think
Get
I
out of here.
I think this we should give a disclaimer that there's going to be a second episode, which was supposed
There
to
will
be
be.
this episode.